Member of the committee, Jacob Rees-Mogg, contempt of Parliament. Why?
Well, the issue is breach of privilege. That a humble address is deemed to be binding, and all previous precedent is that a humble address is binding. And therefore the government has an obligation to meet the terms of that address. It's not now the government's discretion, it has got to fulfil a demand of Parliament. Of course, the government can't provide information that it doesn't have. Nobody's asking for that. But it has to provide information in the terms set out in that motion passed 2 or 3 weeks ago.
So what happens if David Davis says, I'm sorry, I simply do not have that information, I cannot comply?
Well, if he doesn't have it, then that's not what was demanded. The motion demanded information that the government has. So on that bit, he's absolutely fair to say, I don't have this information. What is much harder for him is to say this information is confidential. The motion didn't differentiate between types of information. The government could have amended the motion, they could have voted the motion down. They did neither of those things, and therefore they, by accepting the motion, must accept the responsibility to provide the information that they do have in relation to that motion.
What do you say to maybe, I don't know, Conservative supporters watching you saying, hang on a sec, you are a Conservative MP, you are landing David Davis in deep doo-doo?
Well, it's that the whips didn't vote down, or didn't ask us to vote down a motion that the exiting European Union department is now saying is very difficult for it. The government allowed this motion to pass unanimously. The government accepted this motion. The government, therefore, has agreed to the terms of the motion. Having done that, it can't turn around and say, well, we won't actually do it. If that's its position, it ought to have voted down or asked MPs to vote down the motion in the first place, or to put down an amendment limiting the effect of the motion. And it is still open to the government to put down a motion to amend the humble address to protect information that it is concerned about, and I think that would be the wise thing for the government to do.
We know one of the central arguments of the Leave campaigners was it was about taking back control to Parliament. So in that context, how damaging potentially would this be for the government and David Davis should a motion be put down suggesting that Mr. Davis had defied Parliament in effect?
Well, we're a long way from that. The issue of breach of privilege can be raised privately with the Speaker. If the Speaker then accepts it, it can go to the floor of the House and then to the Committee of Privileges. We're a long, long way from the Committee of Privileges considering whether there has been a breach, and plenty of opportunity for the government to bring itself in line with the motion. But where humble addresses have been ignored in other Commonwealth parliaments, it has been a very serious matter.
But your concern is basically a constitutional one. You're not too fussed about the contents of these documents.
My position is that I would happily have voted to stop these documents being made public. That isn't my concern in this instance. My concern is the powers of the House of Commons versus the executive. And the key thing for people like me and other Conservatives to remember is that we will be in opposition one day. And these protections exist to prevent governments from behaving in an arbitrary and overbearing fashion. That is why the House of Commons has rights. If, when in government, the rights of the House of Commons are ignored or abused, then when we are in opposition, we will not have a leg to stand on when we criticise future governments. So constitutionally, this is of significant importance, and the government has to follow an humble address. All precedent says that it is binding.
Jacob Rees-Mogg, thank you very much for your time.